Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Adams Brothers Podcast. We're getting ready to do a phone interview with Commissioner Mark A. Douglas from the city of Sunrise. He's the Seat A commissioner, and we are getting ready to interview him via phone. He was supposed to join us via live interview on camera, but he can't make it, so we're gonna have him call in. Today is early voting starts today, so Douglas is standing by right now, so pardon me 1 second while I send him a text. Okay, I just sent our guest a text, and he should be calling in momentarily.
Call from Mark Douglas. To accept, press 1. To send a voicemail, press 2.
Okay. Hello, Mr. Mark A. Douglas, and welcome to the Adams Brothers Podcast.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening to you guys. Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome, Will. You're very welcome. We know that you are out on the campaign trail. Well, it's early voting today at here in Florida. I know you're out there at the city of Sunrise over there. I did see you there this morning. You didn't see me, but I saw you out there on the in the parking lot of the soccer field over there. So I know you're out there trying to get these votes in and get people to vote for you. So why don't you just go ahead and introduce yourself to our viewers and everyone that's listening out there in Facebook and YouTube land?
Well, I'm Mark Douglas. Some call me Commissioner Mark Douglas. I've been serving as the city commissioner here in the city of Sunrise for the past 8 years. Outside of that, I am an attorney at law by profession. Been practicing law for the last 18 years or so. Husband and father, and I've been in Sunrise for 23 plus years, which is where I've called home since I migrated from Jamaica, which is where I originally grew up.
Right.
So professionally, I'm an attorney. My second profession, of course, being commissioner. I was elected in 2016 in what was then an historic election, as I became the first minority, first non-white person, according to the Sun Sentinel headline back then, to be elected in the city of Sunrise. And so I've been serving in that role among other capacities.
Okay. And are you term limited out in your current position as the commissioner at City of Sunrise?
I am not. I am not. Sunrise doesn't have term limits, and of course that boggles some people's minds because they're like, "Well, you were resigning to run for mayor, right, and you were pretty settled in the role of commissioner, and why did you take that decision?" And sometimes when things are really important, you have to put it all on the line. I believe that the city of Sunrise, the position of mayor has stagnated, needed refreshing, needed fresh legs, a new vision, and one that really captured the vision and needs of all of the rich tapestry of individuals who call Sunrise home. Sunrise is a very diverse community, and going back to the 2010 census, it indicated that Sunrise was a majority-minority community, but I don't think the needs and issues that of minorities have always been at the forefront of the decision-making process. And so, over the last couple of years, it's my view that the mayor's not been present and engaged in the community. It's been absent quite frankly. And I felt that the city deserved a mayor who was present, who was currently have a stake in the city, and who had a vision for leading this community forward. So I decided to, some would say, risk my position in order to run for mayor.
Right. Now, I heard you mention just now some of the needs of the minorities. In your opinion, what are some of the needs that that needs to be addressed in the minority community?
Well, you know, Sunrise, there's an area what we call East Sunrise, which is really the older part of Sunrise, the original part of what was then Sunrise. And, you know, many people, including myself, felt that that area of the city was underserved in terms of the resource allocation, the level of services that were being allocated to that area, and the infrastructure in that area was below what we would typically see in other areas of the community. And when I ran in 2016, I ran on the platform of ensuring that there was a greater level of resource allocation to those underdeveloped areas. In addition, of course, we had a serious issue with diversity inside of the organization. Sunrise employs over 1,300 full-time equivalent staff members. And in particular, when I came to the city, there was 4 firefighters who were Black out of 163. And there were approximately 15 Black police officers. Today, there's 45. And throughout the organization, there was no senior management person. And in fact, when I came to the city, there were 53 people that were classified as senior management executive, and not one of them was Black.
Right.
So we really had a diversity issue in the city. And that was because we had leadership that really did not consider those issues to be important. They had been in office. One of the commissioners there now has been there 27 years.
Oh,
the
wow.
mayor has been there 15. The mayor is there 15 years unchallenged. And as I said, even though the census in 2010 indicated that it was a majority minority community, not until 2016 did I become minority. Not until 2016 did I become the first minority to be elected in the city. So the city did not really pay a lot of attention to its minority community and the needs of the minorities in the community.
Right. Right.
And what percentage, Mr. Douglas, did you say was the minority community in Sunrise prior to 2006?
Right now,
all right.
Well,
right now,
35% were Black. It indicated 35% Black, about 32% Hispanic, and there was about 10% who referred to themselves as others. Now, I know Caucasian folks don't really call themselves others, so one has to imagine it's a mix of mixed race individuals, maybe people of Indian heritage or something else. But the majority, at this point, the last census indicated close to 70% of the people here are minorities. But we have never really been reflected. I'm still the first Black person on the commission and still the only one on the commission.
Right.
That sounds like Ferguson, Missouri back in the days. They had, the population was a majority Black, but they had no Blacks representing them. That's kind of upside down there.
Well, I think it's typical. The power structures, you know, you need wealth to create power and power to create wealth. And, you know, it's kind of a catch-22.
Right.
But, you know, we didn't have, even though our population numbers were growing, number one, we weren't really participating in the electoral process. We weren't owning and building businesses. We weren't doing a lot of the things that could take us to political office and political power. And today, even with those numbers, we find that our community doesn't vote at the high level that they should. We find that we don't support political candidates in terms of financial support. We don't volunteer a lot. And so other groups, even when they're minorities, they tend to outrun us. Because what Sunrise used to do, we have Sunrise Lakes phase 1, 2, 3, and 4. They're large communities populated by older folks over 55, thousands of people. And what used to happen is that politicians would just go in there and feather their beds because these people were going to vote. and they could put them in office, and they didn't have to care about the rest of the community, even though the majority of people were out there. If you're not voting and you're not affecting the electability of a person, then they have no reason to knock on your door or care about issues that affect you.
Oh yeah,
That's true.
that's in every city here in Broward County, and actually across the country. If you're not going to show up and vote, then you're going to have some folks feel like that they don't have to represent you.
So
That is true. The squeaky wheel gets the grease.
that's true. That's true. And if you're just joining us, we're joined here by City of Sunrise Commissioner Mark A. Douglas. He is the commissioner at seat A. He's running for mayor of the city of Sunrise, Florida. And he called in. He couldn't make it, but we're happy to have him on
Yes.
on the air with us here. So, Commissioner Douglas, if elected to mayor, what will your first 90 days in office look like as mayor of Sunrise?
Well, it's not the presidency and certainly you don't have as much unilateral power,
Right.
as say a chief executive such as a president who can set an agenda and say, you know what, I'm going to achieve these things in the first 90 days.
Right.
One really still needs to act in concert and with the cooperation of the rest of your commission colleagues in getting your agenda set and moved. So I wouldn't want to necessarily say these are the things I'll do in 90 days, but I will say what is missing from the role and what I intend to do is to be that face, to be that leader, to be that visionary that creates a plan and a vision which the rest of the city can follow. And of course, with internal to the organization and with our external partners, the mayor is supposed to be the face of the city, the leader among leaders, if you want to call it. At the end of the day, the person is the person in the role is the one who really should project the image of the city. And one of the reasons I ran, as I mentioned earlier, was that the role was lacking visibility, lacking in engagement. The person was not here. And so, my pledge is to be here, to be present, to be engaged, and to lead this community as it needs to be led. Now, I'll say uniquely in the city of Sunrise, it comes closest to a CEO role in the sense that our police department and our fire department, it's the only city in Broward County, and I have yet to find another one in the state either, that the police chief and the fire chief reports directly to the city commission. And so you have more of an administrative oversight of the police department and the fire department. And so on a day-to-day basis, there's more of a relationship in terms of how they conduct themselves and how they go about policing the community and how they project public safety otherwise with the fire department. And so there's more of a line of reporting, and they need that person with whom they can liaise and who they can call. Not all of the commissioners have the same capacity.
Right.
Not all of them have the training and experience to really manage a police department. And in other cities, a police department or fire department, they report to a city manager. A city manager is presumed, and it's required really to be trained and experienced in managing organizations. Here we have a system where the commissioners are set in the role to oversee these agencies. And, you might have a pizza baker, have a social servant, whatnot. And it's really not to be derogatory to anybody's profession, but if you don't know, you don't know.
Right.
And so you just are not able to be in that role to really manage the hiring of a new police chief, for example. managing your overtime budget when it's running away, and dealing with internal discipline and things like that.
Right.
And I think the mayor really ought to be the person that sits front and center in dealing with those things. And what's really been happening is that I have been the person playing that role, while in fact the mayor has abdicated his role over the last 3 or so years.
Right.
So yeah, I don't want to nail anything down, because of course your policy agenda items are only as good as your ability to get others on board and get a cohesion going. But I know I'm able to do that.
Yes. I remember the days of growing up in the early 70s, mid 70s, late 70s. I remember Sunrise was always in the news. At the time, you had a mayor by the name of John LaMello. And I remember John LaMello, it was like arresting him, I believe, or always talking corruption. But I mean, as far as being represented by minorities, from what you just said, up until you were elected, not too much had changed since the time of John LaMello. I'm glad to see you were elected back in 2016, and I would hope that another Black or minority is following in your footsteps to represent you, or Sunrise is not really going to have that much representation.
Well, there are, to the credit of those who are now running, there's 3 seats really. In the mayor's race, there's myself as a minority individual. In the race to replace me, there's at least 3 Black individuals.
Good.
1 Hispanic.
Good.
And so there's 6 people running to replace me, and at least 3 of them, I think maybe 4 of them. So, I mean, we are coming to the fore. But, there's still significant attempts to patronize us and to, basically say, you know what, you're here, but we know best.
Yeah.
You just stay in your little corner over there, and we'll tell you what to do.
Yeah.
Right.
Stay in your place. That's what.
Right. That's
Yeah.
true. Do the city of Sunrise have a CRA district?
We don't. CRAs are county chartered entities, and so
Right.
The county is, and I don't think the county is in the mood to create any more CRAs, but
Right.
we certainly have the ability to do some of the things that CRAs do. And in fact, there is a proposal. In fact, that's going to be on the agenda tomorrow. There's a proposal to do a development on the east side of Sunrise, which is marked for redevelopment.
Much needed.
And part of that proposal, say again?
I said that's much needed over there too. Go ahead.
Right. So part of that proposal is to have a developer come in. We would give him, we would purchase a piece of land that is adjacent to another piece that they're buying, and we'd give it to them as part of the development process. We would give them about $8 million in construction funds up front. And over a 10-year period, and this is where CRAs usually do it, but over a 10-year period, they would get back, or up to 25 years, they would get $10 million back, and 80% of the taxes they pay would then be given back to them. So that's tax increment financing. That's how the CRAs usually operate.
Right.
So upfront monies plus some give back over time. And the goal is, or at least what it has been sold as, is that it would be a catalyst for further development of the area. They're proposing 415 units. Supposedly, we're buying down about 115 of those units in terms of the cost of the developer, in an effort to get them into the affordability range of up to 120% of area median income.
Right.
But it's not pretty on paper. It's not like it's going to be cheap rent. But the trade-off is that if you create that improvement in the area, it would be a significant catalyst for other private monies to come in, because governments can't do everything. Government is really supposed to be a catalyst. Put the infrastructure in, put the business framework in place, create a positive environment in which businesses can grow and thrive, and let private. And this is what this country is built on anyway. It's a capitalist system. Government is supposed to play a limited role,
Right.
So that is on the table. Tax increment financing would be a big part of that.
And also, most cities are actually trying to sunset their CRAs. I know here where we live at, most cities are. I think our CRA is scheduled for sunset somewhere here in the next few years.
There's been some negativity around CRAs coming out of Miami and places like that. My wife works in a CRA down there.
Right.
Yeah.
A lot of
Gentrification?
There's been some ways. Gentrification is part of it, and it's been discussed here too. Gentrification is a word that is thrown around, and mostly it has negative connotations.
Mm-hmm.
I think it can be done with a balance in mind that considers the need to renew the community versus the need to make sure those who are there continue to be able to remain in their homes and to remain in their communities, to go away and come back and reside in their communities. Right. So it's a delicate balance, really, because those who live there say, hey, we want to redevelop the place, but it takes cash to care. And so, generally you can't take someone's ad valorem taxes, say, I take your property taxes and I give it to, the other guy over there so he can have somewhere affordable to live. Most people don't want to do that. Right. So you really have to try and get private money into the mix, and the private guy wants to make money. So you have to sort of, I think what Miami has done is say, hey, you want to go 20 more stories up? We'll give you that if you give us a certain amount of affordability. Now, when you're stacking, it becomes cheaper exponentially to go higher and higher, just like stocking blocks, So there are creative ways to cause them to be able to build in an economic way, but still create some opportunities for those who are from the community and who can't afford the new structures to still be able to live within the environment.
I also see a comment that you in one of the articles that was printed, and it says that where you stated that we spent $154 million on infrastructure, $94 million of that on parks, and we built a new city hall for over $60 million. It is one of the biggest investments we have made, and I have been at the forefront of making sure that infrastructure rollout is managed. That is very good to be at the forefront of something, making sure that the taxpayers' dollars are well spent.
Yeah, and it's significant to say because when people vote for bonds to be issued, for example, to renew and reinvest in parks, it's a conceptual thing, but it's still got to be managed into fruition. And you have all kinds of issues. For example, in government procurement, you have this thing about highest responsive bidder. So you put a park out for bid, and a guy comes in and he says, I bid 10 million. The other guy says, I bid 12, and the other guy says, I bid 13. The guy who's 10, he has recommendations. He has built some parks before. Great. So he gets the project. Then he comes and he bids for another one. He gets it. And before you know it, he has 3. And then you check and you're like, shit, but you have all this, you have only this amount of equipment. You have 10 other parks under construction at various levels of completion in other cities. How are you going to do this? But because of the rules, if you don't give him the contract, then he sues you.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So then how do you get around that? Well, the way I got around it is to create an ordinance which says you don't just have to be the lowest responsive bidder, but now you've got to be the lowest responsive responsible bidder. And by adding that term responsible, now we have more flexibility in judging the individual as to whether they're able to fulfill what they're saying that they're going to fulfill.
Right.
and you can use your past experience with them. And in fact, we were able to weed out one particular contractor who not only did he have 3 of our parts and was winning more, but he failed on 2 of them.
Yeah.
And we had to have others come in and do them. So that stopped them in their tracks. Another thing I was able to do is add to that legislation and say, you're from Lantana, Florida, and I get it that you could be from Timbuktu as long as you're in the United States.
Mhm.
You can, the Commerce Clause says we cannot discriminate against you. You're here. But guess what? I'm going to make it a requirement that at least 20% of your prime contract goes to local registered businesses as subcontractors. So we make sure we keep some money in the local community. So those are ways you can impact that. And of course, everything in with the city hall, everything included in the design, where it's located. When I first came, they planned to locate it between the police department, between the library and the senior center. They were going to stick it between this little place that in fact is a canal now, is a lake, I'm sorry. And I was like, that's ridiculous. It makes no sense. So the current location is something I pushed to move it there, and it was the correct place. As part of that project, they had also proposed to build a water park. And when I ran in 2016, the Sun Sentinel said, support water park opponent Mark Douglas, because they had proposed to build a water park for $10 million. And what they did not say was that in order for the water park to operate, you would need a 300 space garage associated with it. They didn't talk about the cost of that, but that would be another $30,000 per space. So that's another $9 million right there.
Right.
So I advocated against it at the time I was running, and when it came up before me, I put a debt nail in that. And as a result of not spending $19 million on a water park, we were able to direct those monies to infrastructure that's more suitable for what the community needs.
Yeah.
And so it is important who is sitting there. It's important. Elections of consequences.
Absolutely.
And that water park would have been a white elephant. That typical water park only operates 6 months out of the year.
Right.
But you have to maintain it right through the year.
Right.
Mhm. And I can tell you, I'm in Sunrise often, and Sunrise has the best parks in Broward County. I can tell you that. And the water parks that you're speaking of, and City Hall, it was just completed here sometime this year. Beautiful place. They upgraded the sewage pumping station out there on the corner. So yes, very well thought out, and yes, very, very well thought out.
And I also wanted to say too that that's how former Atlanta Mayor Maynard Jackson came into office. He made sure that minorities got definitely contracts, and he mandated that they had to have a certain percentage. And also, former DC Mayor Marion Barry was the same way. They don't get enough credit for what they did. I mean, with Marion Barry, he's looked at in a negative connotation because of in the FBI with the FBI sting. But Maynard Jackson was a true gem to Atlanta. And if we just had a lot more people with that process, what you're saying, what you're going to do if elected, if you had that same thought process that Maynard Jackson had and you have right now, I think we can get a lot more done in our communities.
Well, I think it depends on the type of government. When you mentioned John Lomello, when John Lomello was mayor, he was what we call a strong mayor. So
yeah.
He was a chief executive type mayor.
Mm-hmm.
He may have hired a manager, but the manager still reported to him. The police chief, everybody reports. And Plantation is one of the holdout governments that has that form of government in place. So if you would ask me if I was a Plantation mayor, and you asked me a bunch of those questions, like what are you going to do in the first 90 days? Are you going to mandate that minorities get contracts and so on? Mm-hmm. Then I could say yes, because as a CEO, the commission is more of a legislative body, and you run the show.
Right.
In a city like mine, where it's a mayor, it's a commission manager form of government. It's the commission that mandates that. On the commission, you're one of 5 votes, and the other 3 can outvote you or the other four cannot vote you, and even though you're mayor, you would not be able to override that.
Right.
So it's a different form of government, and with different forms of government, mayors, in a big city like Atlanta and places like that, you definitely have more power to take unilateral action.
Right.
Oh yeah. Yeah, LaMelo definitely was that strong mayor back in the days, and I can just remember him when I was in, like I say, when I was in high school. All I heard was Sunrise, John LaMelo. I mean, his name every other day he was doing something. He was in the news, and his name always resonated in my mind about Sunrise.
They say what makes us good makes us bad.
Yeah,
John LaMelo. He had some traits where some would say he was bullheaded or whatnot, but he definitely created some significant infrastructure in Sunrise that is now driving our growth and development.
Yes, he did.
Regional water utility. We serve not just the city of Sunrise in its entirety, but 60% of Davis Water Utility, underground and above ground, is owned by us. We supply water to Weston and some of Southwest Ranches. So we are a regional utility. We're also a gas utility, and our gas comes straight out of the, Texas in gas pipeline, similar to FPL. Right. So we are the only municipal gas utility in South Florida. And the Sawgrass Mall, for example, which is considered the largest outlet mall in the country, and which attracts over 25 million visitors to Sunrise on an annual basis, the second largest attraction behind Disney World, is as a result of John LaMelo's efforts.
Oh, yeah.
So, while he may have been, in some instances, reviled by some and, criticized for some of his actions, he also did take some actions that led to the strong growth that Sunrise now enjoys.
Right.
No doubt.
Yeah.
He had his good and he had his bad. Hopefully he's resting in peace right now.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So,
unlike me, which is all good,
Right. So, Mr. Douglas, is there anything else that you want the voters of Broward County to know about you before we let you go? As a matter of fact, tell everybody out there listening right now why in Sunrise. I have to make sure I'm saying in Sunrise. Tell the people of Sunrise why they should elect you as the next mayor of Sunrise.
Well, they should elect me because as of today, this point in the history of the city, I'm the person that's positioned to serve in that role. And in fact, while I was not the mayor in title, I've been playing a lot of that role on the commission over the last few years. The commission, as it existed, appointed me to serve as the city's representative on the Broward League of Cities. That's a leadership role that they chose me to play on their behalf. When we needed to hire, for example, a new city attorney or a new fire chief, the commission chose me to negotiate their employment contracts and bring it back for ratification. I was chosen to serve on the board of the National League of Cities, and while I chaired their Federal Advocacy Committee on Finance, I brought $17 million back to the city of Sunrise in federal grants. And in addition, I've been chosen to, and I've been serving on the board of trustees of the Florida Municipal Insurance Trust, which is the city's main insurer, an entity that insures over 60% of cities in this state and many counties and other governmental organizations, $15 billion worth of property. And the city of Sunrise pays over $6 million in premium to that entity. So I've been playing multiple leadership roles on the commission. I've been present, I've been engaged, I've been representing this community very well, and I believe I'm best suited and best situated to serve that role today in the city of Sunrise.
Well, you definitely have an impressive resume. So, Mark A. Douglas.
I want to say one other thing
go ahead.
too before you go. I heard you say earlier one of the commissioners or councilmen. I've been there 27 years. I'm personally, Mr. Douglas, I believe in term limits. I don't believe in one person staying in government that long. You need new blood. And that's
Fresh
just my
ideas.
opinion, fresh ideas.
Right.
I believe 8 is enough. And hopefully more cities will come up with that. I mean, you keep hearing this argument about, well, good people there. Well, you know what, 27 years, come on. I mean, bring some new ideas and new faces in there, but that's just here. I know we voted term limits down in a few years ago. Well, we didn't vote it down. We voted to keep term limits intact, and I hope it continues to stay that way here for decades to come. Thank you, Mr. Douglas, for joining us.
Yeah.
Good luck. I just listening to you. I don't know. I heard of the guy you're running against for years, but I wish you well in your quest to unseat him.
Very well, sir. Thank you for your time, and thank you for having me on.
Mark A. Douglas, thank you very much for joining the Adams Brothers podcast. Good luck to you, sir. And early voting starts today. So if you're in the city of Sunrise, get out there and vote and make your vote count. Mark A. Douglas, thank you for joining us and have a wonderful rest of your evening.
Thank you.
Thanks, sir. All the best to you. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Good night.
We're coming back with a pop-up podcast too, so stay tuned. Stay with us.
Yes. We were just on the line with Mark A. Douglas. He is the current city commissioner with the city of Sunrise, seat A. He's running for the mayor's seat with the city of Sunrise. So he was supposed to be here on camera with us, but he couldn't make it. We know that today early voting started, so he couldn't make it on camera, but he did call in. So Mark A. Douglas, thank you very much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to call in. And we wish you well, sir. Good luck to you. And don't forget to join us here real soon. We're going to come back with a pop-up podcast. Okay? Thank you all for watching, and we'll be back real soon.